Welcome to another fine episode of Pixel Talk, the show where we discuss what it means to be human from a pixel's point of view. And now, here is your host, Fivezy.
Here we go for today's number. It's July 26, 2021. 10 balls. Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers. Pick a number. Today's number is 5.
Valuable to the Americans. Mr. Delaney, as a British subject, you owe a debt of loyalty to your king and country.
If patriotism is not in your motivation, perhaps money can be. Before your unexpected return, we had agreed a figure with your half-sister. Her husband drove a particularly hard bargain.
I'm sorry, no, Nook Sound is not for sale.
Open the envelope.
Are you deaf?
Mr. Delaney.
Mr. Delaney, perhaps the Leviathan of the seas, is it? The terrible shadow? The beast with a million eyes and a million ears? Conquest? Rape? Plunder? I studied your methods in your school, and I do know the evil that you do, because I was once part of it.
Please take a moment to consider the consequences of your refusal.
What consequences? Perhaps we should adjourn. Mr. Delaney, I'll give you one last chance to behave like a loyal subject of His Majesty and the lawful crown of England. Sell this land for a reasonable price. Now, why don't you just open the fucking envelope?
page me perd un peu. Un ciel trop bleu, sans aucun nuage. Un mirage.
This is 26-year-old Dawson McGee, sitting in a police interrogation room in the early hours of a Tuesday morning. The Monday night before, he stabbed his own mother to death for asking him to move out of the house and get a job. Dawson is unaware that he is being recorded on a hidden camera. In 3 seconds from now, he will hear the sound of the door being opened by a detective. And at that exact moment, you will see a remarkably noticeable switch in his demeanor.
Something I want to talk to you about. We're talking about what happened to your mom. What happened to my mom? Well, you tell me. People called me and said something happened at home to mom. They were very bad. What happened to my mom? Well, that's what I'm asking you. I was waiting for my brother and sister to tell me. Okay. Well, was your sister home this weekend? Wait, I'm supposed to have an attorney? If you want one. Am I supposed to have one? I should request an attorney. Well, that's up to you if you like one. But we'd like to talk to you. I would offer that. I don't want to ask for anything. Do you want to ask for an attorney? Yeah. Okay.
It would come as no surprise that a judge deemed him fit to stand trial. A jury then found him legally sane, and he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his mother, all of which was in spite of a continuous charade of mental illness similar to the one you see here. Dawson clearly believed that his passage through the legal system would somehow be easier if he were presumed insane, which is a naive yet somewhat common misconception that many suspects make when facing serious charges. They have this notion that a plea of insanity would either lower the severity of their punishment or liberate them from it altogether. That instead of being sent to prison, they would simply be released back into society, perhaps with a free psychotherapeutic program to attend on the weekends. This is, of course, a far cry from reality. In the United States, if you're found responsible for a serious offense, but also found not guilty of the crime by reason of insanity, you will be institutionalized at a high-security psychiatric facility. These institutions are without question some of the darkest and most disturbing places in the system. And if you're not actually suffering from the crippling effects of mental illness, living in this type of environment will be a mentally agonizing experience. The foresight of what occurs inside these units would make the majority wish to avoid them. But once you are in, it is very hard to get out, and you will have to serve the same, if not a greater amount of time than you would have had to serve at a regular prison. So to put it briefly, if you commit a serious offense and then pretend to be crazy in order to get away with it, your life from that point forward will be an extremely dark and uncomfortable existence, whether you manage to fool the system or not. But there is one benefit, which is the elimination of capital punishment. The United States cannot execute someone deemed insane during the time of their offense, which is the only conceivable reason a defendant would cling to this narrative even after knowing what lies ahead should it succeed. And this happens to be a notion that ties in closely to the primary subject of this video. It will focus on one particular individual whose interrogation footage is so fraught with blatant trickery that most of the segments presented to you won't even need suggestive commentary.
where you can wake up in the morning and be home.
This place violates the law. They're open the door and they don't care. I mean,
You like to drink in the morning?
In the morning, because in the night, you're up to 5, 6 o'clock at night. Let's go out for a drink. My schedule is completely backwards. It's either us midnight guys or just the complete alcoholics. Unlike ourselves. Well, there's some people that they can continue partying for 24 hours. I schedule like Saturday mornings, people are left over from Friday night to come in and already have quite a few, They want to keep math also when you haven't been a part of what's gone on the night before.
Let's say a guy your age or my age that would come into it. He would be, like if he was out at 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, he'd be with his girlfriend or whatever, her friends, and, it would be more like rocking and rolling. It tend to be more tense. Whereas the same guy coming in the morning would be more relaxed. Even if he was up the night before, or he just had the next day off and he wanted to come in for a few morning pops, would be 10 times more relaxed.
So we're cold here.
Butterfly stuff here. Stay Weird with butterflies with the color stamped out. And so Britney is, the epitome of this iconic blonde bombshell, ditzy blonde that's depressed and sad, mentally ill, and has a tragic end. Now, America has always been in love. Hollywood's been in love with this archetype. It was before Marilyn Monroe, but Marilyn Monroe's the most famous one.
Marilyn, I was asking Milton what you thought of that look cover that he did.
You see that just lack of consciousness of you.
I like it very much, although I like most of Milton's pictures.
Very childlike and sleepy, right? Almost like a sleep-like state. Very innocent. I mean, the whole idea of a Playboy bunny, somebody who's, again, isn't conscious or aware of what's going on around them. This lost look, right? And, innocent and helpless, often seen as a victim consciousness, right? And there is tragedy, depression, tragedy, self-abuse, suicide, these sort of flip outs you see them have, right? Meltdowns, some sort of psychological schism. And she is, just this lost look. And they've pushed this icon, someone masked her up here. They pushed this icon, the blonde bombshell icon has been around for, as long as I can remember. As long as there's been a Hollywood, there's been this blonde icon. We also have an association with Playboy magazine.
And I wonder what it feels like to belong to the public.
My goodness, I guess I feel the same way as the Tower of London feels.
Do you find it at all disagreeable?
This is Jane Mansfield. These women died before I was born or died when I was young. This is from 1960. I was born in 1964. But this is, she was a playmate and also, following the footsteps of Marilyn Monroe.
Actually, I feel that a star owes it to her public to bring the public into her life.
Just this lost affect, this, sleepy type of, almost like drugged, right? Some sort of being in some sort of hypnotic stupor. Jane Mansfield was, again, in the vein of Marilyn Monroe. She kind of filled the void left when Marilyn Monroe died. These died in tragic deaths. And then Jane Mansfield died as well in a car accident, in air quotes, right? Similar to so many of these so-called starlets. And, they just have this tragic victim depressed affect that's going to end poorly. And there's this sort of underbelly of Hollywood. Here's Jane Mansfield with Anton LaVey, who ran the Church of Satan. And she was associated with this guy, right? This evil-looking Delaware MFer, right? And so this sort of MK Ultra sacrifice type of a situation that these starlets are involved in, right? It's holding a skull here. And so that's, a part of this, the underbelly of Hollywood, the stuff that they don't, talk about. And, this was there. This was satanic presence in Hollywood. And these starlets were associated with that, many of them. Of course, there was Princess Diana, who also had this depressed, this depressed affect. She was somebody who was, in a marriage where her husband was in love with another woman. She was having, she was a eating disorder and depression and on psychological medication. She was one of the most popular royal family members in history, had a big following in America, but she also had this sad affect. She was sort of ditzy and had that, that way of talking, a dreamy, like, they're in a dream-like state. They're not fully awake, right? Somebody who's not fully conscious. That creepy MFer there, right, is he fixed Dracula's castle because Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, was one of their distant relative ancestors. And so he went and saved Dracula's castle. But Diana's another one of these tragic figures, iconic, a worldwide figure, who embraced this role of the ditzy, sort of depressed, sleepy, blonde bombshell. Then, of course, there was Anna Nicole Smith. They often have these sort of meltdowns, right? She was somebody who had one of these meltdowns, right?
She thinks she has. Is this a mushroom trip?
Where there's an alternate personality, a child type of personality emerges, and they have these meltdowns, and her handler is videotaping her and humiliating her here. And this could have been dealt with privately, right? Why would this be out in the public? It's happening at her home. She's, acting like a little girl. She's having this age regression. This is very common with sexual abuse and things like this. Here she is with Regis and Kathy Lee.
What a year you've had.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like a guest shirt to me.
Yeah, jeans and all.
Well,
Although Marilyn Monroe has been an idol of yours all your life, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love her.
Marilyn Monroe, right, wanting to be a Marilyn Monroe, this tragic, she had a tragic end. So many of these playmates, these iconic Playboy models, end up dying in some sort of tragic way. One of them was, I talked about this in an earlier video, she called Hugh Hefner the devil, and in MK Mind Control stuff, the devil is the handler, and she painted in red paint around her apartment where she was found dead. There was an inverted pentagram and things like that, right? And this, tragic end to these women's lives, right? These, adult girl-like women, you can see that they're doomed, right? They're lost. They're not, able to mature into women and have productive lives and become mothers and, become serious people in some way. They're just lost in this, like, drug-like stupor. Here's Britney Spears having one of her meltdowns. Is that one of your biggest wishes? She did this with Diane Sawyer as well. Here she is with Matt Lauer.
Yeah. It's okay. I would like for them to leave me alone.
She's talking about the paparazzi, right? And of course, Matt Lauer, he's dressed here like Pamela Anderson. He had his own blonde bombshell moment, right? Bracing this archetype. We know how things worked out for Matt. So then there was these other women that embraced this role. Farrah Fawcett, this iconic picture of her. She was on that show Charlie's Angels when I was a kid. She was somebody who also had this ditzy affect, right? Nothing serious, often shilling for the beast. You see this with like country singers, Dolly Parton being the big one, where they seem to identify and be connected to the people, but they often are used to push an agenda in a ditzy way. And they have, again, depression and mental illness, lots of issues. This is Suzanne Summers, again, the association with Playboy. She was this iconic star for a number of years when she was on Three's Company, playing this ditzy role. I mean, this Three's Company show was a horrible show, and she was like, a really low IQ'd person, a character, really stupid, saying all these sort of ditzy things. She was more of a person that managed her success, right? Where she became, now she does like infomercials and stuff, but she was somebody who would embrace this role, right? That was given this, there always has to be this blonde icon. Of course, Madonna embraced this role in a different way. She was in that, that Marilyn Monroe knockoff, and she became this sort of blonde icon for a while. Ditzy, but then she became a feminist. She has her own mental health issues, though, and she embraced the Marilyn Monroe comparison and archetype. She was this iconic star, and then there was this sort of epic performance at MTV where she raises Britney Spears up from her knees, who's worshiping Madonna dressed in black, like she's gone to the dark side, right? And then Britney Spears is still innocent, and Christina Aguilera, who also embraced this sort of blonde bombshell role as well. She raises her up and gives her a kiss, like passing on her demonic energy, right? Her, demon into Britney. And then Justin Timberlake looking on, and then she kisses Christina Aguilera. They kind of, crapped all over Christina Aguilera's moment, but her passing on this, archetype and the tragedy and the depression and all the things that go with it. Madonna sort of evolved into being like a handler, like an Ellen or a Jimmy Kimmel's or somebody, where she became more of a gatekeeper. She went from being this sort of sex symbol in her early parts of her career to being, one of the, higher ups in this sort of, hierarchy. Of course, there was Lady Gaga, who embraced this blonde, iconic role. She had her own mental health issues, and sometimes they recover from this, and they're able to get another part, another role, but often they don't, right? Often they suffer some sort of tragic end. But she's, her and Madonna are sort of a different version of this. You now see this with Billie Eilish, who is got that sleepy, just this low consciousness. Looks like they're stoned, this affect, you could just see it, like this sleepiness, the not, being aware of their surroundings, right? And she is, a new generation of this for kids who are self-abusive and lost and depressed. This almost sort of like, this drugged out stupor that they're in, self-abusive and suicidal ideation and the rest of it. And so this is, an iconic figure. And there's many young women who are influenced by this example of womanhood. And there's, it's embraced more or less by Americans. These blonde women get a lot more love than some of the other celebrities I talked about. Britney, a lot of people in the truth community and Republicans have a, soft spot for Britney because she's viewed as a victim and she's like an all-American girl. And there's this, this association with that, right? And so there's all these famous blonde women who have died. Of course, Brittany Murphy is another one. I've talked about Marilyn Monroe, is that Grace Kelly. These women who have died tragic deaths, and many of them associated with Playboy. These women who are sort of lost and confused, and then they end up having these tragic deaths. And it is, part of American Hollywood culture, right? And, they're doomed from the beginning. There's sort of this, the four non-blondes, like this anti-blonde Hollywood culture now as well, like a subculture of this, this Hollywood pushing of this childlike, depressed, and in a daze, stoned, iconic woman. Had a mental breakdown and they handcuffed him to an ambulance. And he came out with blonde hair. They did the same thing with Justin Bieber. Beyonce's another one of these iconic blonde bombshells, very ditzy, not a lot of intelligence. She seems to be in a daze.
You do that? Is that a sign for your name or something? What is that? That's the Rockefeller sign. Oh.
Yeah, it looks a lot like an Illuminati pyramid.
On a journey, I got places to go. Wanna chase a miracle. It's possible, you just gotta open the door.
Darling, it's cold out there. Don't fear the road, just come along with me. You're not alone out there. Let's write a song, make up the melody. If you're looking for me, baby, you know you can find me following the sun. So Somewhere running up my heartbeat, I don't look behind me, following the sun.
Thanks for watching. Pixel Talk will return.